Welcome to the Crazy Chicken People podcast. If you're crazy about chickens, then you're in the right place. Hello, everybody, and welcome back for another episode of the Crazy Chicken People podcast. I've got a fun show lined up for today, one that I really enjoyed putting together. I was doing a little bit of research on chicken history and started getting down a rabbit hole on YouTube, as I sometimes do, and was just finding out a bunch of information about chickens and how they came to be, their history of being bred. And as I was going through them, I was just picking up on a lot of interesting chicken facts that I just never heard before. So I kind of strayed away from what I was originally researching and ended up putting together an episode more about chicken history and some cool stories about how chickens and humans have been tied together for so long. So I hope that you enjoy it. I am certain that you will hear something that you had not heard before about chickens. One thing that I definitely found to be true and applies to everything I'm probably about to say is that the history of chickens is not super well documented, and much of it seems to be up for debate. So while I don't feel like anything I'm about to say is untrue, I think you could also go and find some information that contradicts it or maybe a slightly different version. So anyways, I'll start with what originally got me looking into this, and that is the total number of chickens in the world right now. And this blew me away, but at any given moment, there is an estimated 34 billion chickens on the planet. That is more than any other type of bird currently or that has ever existed, which is pretty crazy. And it got me thinking, how did we get from 0 chickens, knowing that this is an animal that we more or less created, to them now outnumbering us by just better than 4-1. And the answer to that starts 8,000 to 10,000 years ago in the jungles of Southeast Asia, where the wild red jungle fowl was first domesticated. Now, there's also studies that say the wild gray jungle fowl of India may have also been getting domesticated at about the same time, as DNA traces from those gray jungle fowl have also been found in modern day chickens. But for the most part, it is the red jungle fowl that gets credit as being the ancestor of all chickens we know today. It is also widely accepted that these jungle fowl were originally domesticated for the purpose of cockfighting. Now, whether or not that's the whole story or if they were being used for food early on also can't be said for sure. But what is definite is that cockfighting is what eventually helped carry chickens out of Asia and all the way across to Europe and Africa. Now, I can tell you that I do not, and I believe most people listening to this also would not support cockfighting, but I do think it's important to know that it is part of the history of chickens and an influence that got us to where we are today with these birds. And it's a big part of human history as well. Cockfighting played a major role in many cultures, shown to entertain royalty, and even used to invigorate troops before battle. The sport was growing at a rapid pace, and by 55 BC, chickens and cockfighting were a part of nearly every developed country in Europe and Asia. Unbelievably, it was not until almost 2,000 years later in the mid-1800s that cockfighting was finally banned in most European countries, and not until 2007 until the last state in the US outlawed it. Now, cockfighting is still practiced both legally and illegally around the world, and is one of the oldest known events to be wagered on. In fact, every year, the Philippines hosts the World Slasher Cup, which is the largest cockfighting exhibition in the world today. Breeders fly in from all over the world with their chickens to determine a world champion. Chickens eventually made their way to northern Africa and specifically into Egypt by 1750 BC. There, they were kept as pets by royalty and even sacrificed to the gods. 1,000 years after they had originally shown up there, one of the most impactful discoveries in the history of chickens was made when Egyptians became the first to successfully build and use incubators. These large oven-like chambers were maintained by skilled caretakers who monitored temperature, humidity, turned the eggs, and maintained the fires, pretty much doing all the things that our automatic incubators do for us now. With these incubators, the Egyptians were able to breed chickens far more effectively than the rest of the world. However, they kept secret exactly how they were doing this. Europeans would actually travel to try to get a look at these chambers and understand how the Egyptians were so successful in their chicken breeding, but their exact methods were not discovered until much, much later. A Greek philosopher of the time, Aristotle, actually wrote about those incubators. He believed that the Egyptians were burying the chicken eggs in dung, and that's how they were getting them to hatch, when in fact, dried dung was actually used to burn the fires that kept those incubators warm. That probably did not smell good. I don't think I'd want that job. Now, for some perspective on the ingenuity of these early incubation chambers, it wasn't until the 1700s AD that modern incubation methods were being developed. And then not until 1844 that the electronic incubators available now were patented in the US. So the Egyptians were far ahead of their time. Chicken had also started to become more widely used for food across the world rather than just for cockfights. In fact, the Roman army found chicken to be an efficient way to feed their troops when they were on the move, so selective breeding for larger birds and more eggs began to change the chicken's physical traits. Later, in medieval Europe, chickens became a staple for quickly expanding populations. Being that they were generally easy to keep and affordable, the numbers multiplied very quickly. Bone records reveal that this was a major turning point in the chicken's DNA, as larger birds who lay more eggs were being bred all across Europe. But the ease of raising chickens was not the only factor that kept pushing them into nearly every kitchen. Religious practices of the time included days of avoiding meat that came from a four-legged animal, and so chicken consumption again increased. So not only did religion have a direct effect on the evolution of the chicken physically, but as an idol as well. Chicken's influence could be seen on religions all across the world. For example, eggs were a symbol of fertility in early pagan rituals. And in Persia, some religions taught that the crowing rooster was a symbol of a turning point in the cosmic struggle between dark and light. On the Chinese zodiac, those born in the year of the rooster are known to be shrewd, daring, outspoken, and boastful. That might remind you of some roosters that you know. Norse mythology believed the crowing rooster signaled the coming of Ragnarok, while in Islam it is believed that a crowing rooster has seen an angel, and it is letting you know that you're in their presence. In Christianity, Jesus makes reference to a rooster, forecasting that Peter would deny him 3 times before the rooster crowed that next day. And in the 9th century, it was required that a rooster be displayed atop all Christian churches as a reminder of Peter's denial of Jesus. This eventually led to placing the rooster on weather vanes as a symbol of divine guidance under that house. So from the very beginning of their existence, chickens were influential in shaping human history. Although chickens' intelligence may be underappreciated, studies have shown that chickens are in fact highly intelligent animals. Being self-aware, able to distinguish themselves from others, they demonstrate complex problem-solving skills, and they learn from one another. Chickens can actually recognize up to 100 faces, both human and animal. So if you've always thought that your favorite chicken recognized you when you walk into that run, you're probably right. They also use complex communication, including over 30 unique vocalizations that they use to communicate a variety of messages to each other, including mating calls, stress signals, warnings of danger, how they are feeling, or if they discovered food. Now, this really surprised me. Hens and their yet-to-hatch chicks can actually converse through the shell. This allows the chicks to recognize their mother's voice, which is crucial to their survival when raised naturally. Research has also shown that chickens experience REM sleep, meaning that they can dream just like us. They also have a sleep phase that humans don't experience, called unihemispheric slow-wave sleep. This is where one half of the brain is asleep and the other half is awake. I don't know why they say humans can't do that. I feel like I do that all the time at work. But For chickens, it means that they can literally sleep with one eye open, which is especially useful when they're looking out for predators. They have a compass built into the base of their beak between their eyes that actually uses Earth's magnetic fields to help them navigate around and remember where they came from. Chickens have done such a good job adapting to us and the changing world around them that in turn, people have made chickens a part of our everyday culture. And it's been that way for hundreds of years. The story of Chicken Little, or a story very similar to it, has been told to children dating back to the 14th century. The long-standing joke, "Why did the chicken cross the road?" was first asked in 1847. King Henry IV, talking to his people, spoke of a chicken in every pot. His line was later used in the 1928 U.S. presidential election. Speaking of presidents and chickens, Woodrow Wilson and Theodore Roosevelt both kept backyard flocks in the White House. In fact, Roosevelt had a number of animals, including a bear, a one-legged rooster, and a hyena that apparently he had grown quite fond of. We even use chickens as a reference to our own status, adopting phrases like, "his chickens have come home to roost" when someone is dealing with their consequences, or counting their chickens before they hatch when you are banking on an outcome that hasn't happened yet. When we try a new food we are unfamiliar with and can't quite describe, it's often said to taste like chicken. There are hundreds and hundreds of foods that have been described to taste like chicken. And maybe that's why, as the human race continued to expand, so did the consumption of poultry. In 1920, chickens became the first animal to be factory farmed, as synthetic vitamin D gave us the ability to keep egg production going year-round. Chickens went from laying an average of 80 to 150 eggs a year in the late 1800s, up to 250 by the 1940s. As World War II picked up and troops needed to be fed, commercial flock sizes increased, and people at home were encouraged to raise their own birds as a patriotic way to help with food supplies. As methods of production became more efficient, chicken numbers continued to skyrocket in the later half of the century, and by 1990, there was over 10 billion chickens in the world. In 1996, chicken meat became more widely available than pork, and in 2010, chicken surpassed beef as the most consumed meat product in the U.S. In 2021, 86 million metric tons of eggs were consumed from commercial egg producers worldwide, and that doesn't even account for the millions more in backyard flocks. So throughout the better part of human history, the chicken has been right there with us, adapting to new climates, evolving to fit our need for more food, growing from a wild jungle bird to living in the backyard of more than 10 million American homes. Chickens have fascinated us for thousands of years and will continue to do so. We selectively breed them for egg color or personality. We keep them as pets and form strong emotional relationships with them. We even keep odd stats on them, like the New York woman who once found an egg with 9 yolks inside of it, setting the Guinness World Record. Or the Ohio man who wanted to know how many feathers a chicken had, so counted every one of the 8,325 on his Plymouth Rock hen. And the backyard chicken keepers continue to try to improve the methods that they keep and care for chickens. In fact, there's multiple independent studies that have confirmed that chickens who listen to classical music and are kept generally stress-free tend to lay more and larger eggs. I mean, somebody actually thought to test and document that. And we also study their history from long before the first jungle fowl was ever caught. You probably heard the theory that modern-day birds are the distant relatives of dinosaurs. This was possibly proven in 2003 when scientists Jack Horner and Mary Schweitzer discovered unfossilized materials inside of a T-Rex's leg bone. That material was able to be compared to the modern animal DNA at a molecular level, revealing that the T-Rex's closest living relative on Earth is the modern-day chicken. More importantly, what this also proved, after much speculation and debate, is that T-Rex did in fact taste like chicken. I hope that you all enjoyed that and hopefully learned something that you had never heard before, or at the very least, got you interested in doing a little bit of chicken history research yourself. If you did enjoy the show and want to leave a positive review or rating for it, that would be awesome. I hope you guys all have a great week, and I'll talk to you again soon.